I'm Jennifer Gilmour and I'm an author and advocate for women in abusive relationships. I want to get to the answers to the questions that many have from those that work in the domestic abuse sector, getting an inside feel of what it's really like in their job role and sharing it with all of you. Right, so hi everybody, welcome to the next instalment of #Abuse Talk interviews. I am so excited to have the lovely Taylor with us today, and you're joining us to talk about your work as a domestic abuse support worker and also a McKenzie friend in training, which we're all intrigued about. But briefly, we met, I think it was in October at the Court Said protest. But when I say briefly, it was, I don't think we actually had a conversation. But since then, we have had a few little conversations online and have seen the work that you're building and you're starting to do and help others. And so it just naturally fell upon me to ask you to join us for this podcast and interview, and I'm so delighted that you agreed. So thank you so much, because not everybody wants to. So thank you so much. And I have to say, we've had so many questions in and a completely different variety, so I'm really excited to sort of get our teeth into this and find out a bit more about you. So first of all, though, can you tell us just a bit about you and what your job role entails?
Well, I am a survivor myself, obviously, of domestic abuse, coming out of a domestic abuse marriage. Went through the court system myself, and just found myself, just like everybody else, just really frustrated. Found that I went in completely naive, completely innocent to it all, not having a clue what anything was about. I had legal representation, I followed them blindly, and sort of coming out the other side and just thinking, oh my goodness, what has just happened to me? And then realizing that it happens to so many other people, and it just made me want to not have my experience be in vain, I suppose I tend to call it. And I find that people say to me, and I do come from that sort of background where, I'm good at speaking to people, good at public talking and things. That was my old career. And I found that people were telling me that I came across in court very well and things like that. And I just thought, you know what, it'd be really great to be able to help others in some way, shape or form. And it sort of started with being on the Facebook support groups and things, and people sort of reaching out. And if I found that I could help somebody, if I had some knowledge in that, to answer that question that they had, then I would say, feel free to inbox me or, get my number and we can chat about it. And if I can help, I will. And it just kind of spiraled from there, really. And then I got to know other people through, sort of Rachel Williams and stuff, and obviously Natalie Page. And then I eventually met a lovely woman called Misha, who runs Sane Sisters in the East Midlands, which is where I'm based. And found out everything that she was doing and setting up Sane Sisters and the courses that she was doing and the workshops and things. And I was just like, oh my God, I want in, I want to be part of that. And so then became a domestic abuse support worker through sort of Sane Sisters, as well as through the Facebook pages. And then just thought, you know what, I'd love to, lots of questions that you get bombarded with tend to be legal based questions. And I knew little bits from my own experience. I knew little bits from sort of helping others and getting information and things. But then I thought, wouldn't it be great if Sane Sisters had a Mckenzie friend on board, someone who could go down that sort of more legal route slightly and be able to go into court and be more of a voice and things, when you're sitting with the survivor and stuff in the rooms, and you can say, actually, I know a bit about that, I can help you. Or if someone phones you and says, I need help with my statement, and you can say, actually, yeah, I can do that, and I'm a Mckenzie friend, so I'm legally allowed to do that. And it just sort of, opens up some more doors, really. I'm going on, sorry.
No, that's great. That's fantastic. I mean, can you tell everybody really what a Mckenzie friend does? So people get an idea, because I think quite a few people haven't actually heard of the role. And for me, in my experience through family court, it wasn't until he tried to bring in a Mckenzie friend in that I heard about it, and that was maybe a couple of years down the line. So Could you just let everybody in on that for me?
I very recently found out, actually, and to my dismay, I suppose would be the word, wasn't until I started training and went on the first course that I've done already that I found out that anybody can be and can class themselves as a McKenzie friend. So you could take your mum with you could take your boyfriend with you could take your next door neighbour with you. They don't have to have any knowledge of anything, and you can just say they're here as my McKenzie friend, which to me is a little bit worrying. And it's not because I don't think people should be allowed to have a support system even going into the courtroom with you, but I think that there should be a difference between having that emotional support and more of a McKenzie friend support. So when I found out that you don't even have to do any courses, you can literally just sign yourself up as a McKenzie friend. I mean, a lot of McKenzie friends charge. I don't charge, but so you can anything between 150 and 400 pounds for a day in court, I've heard. Wow. And I think, you know, if you're going to go down that route and take on that kind of role, you really need to be making sure that you know what you're talking about, and you have some kind of knowledge, because if you give the wrong advice out or the wrong information or help someone in the wrong way, it could really, it could completely destroy their case for a start. So I think it is a really sensitive thing. I would say always do your research on McKenzie friends if you're going to go down the route of finding someone who is what I call sort of a formal McKenzie friend, so someone who's not your mum or your brother, and going down that route, especially if you're going to pay for this, pay for the services they give you, and just make sure that you've got someone that actually knows what they're doing, for starters, and two, is going to fight in your corner. Because one thing I found while doing the courses and meeting other people that have been doing the courses is that people will go in with their own agendas. So you'll get men going in because, you know, they've been up against their wife and stuff like that, and so they will kind of tend to not like the women so much. And it always worries me to think, well, you know, would you represent a woman just to ruin things for her? And then you might get people on the flip side, really, I suppose. So it is a little bit. But yeah, as far as what we do, well, you learn basic law, and it's literally just family law. So it's not like a lawyer where you're learning, you're there for years in university and learning law as a whole, the international law, and then going off and specialising in, you know, I fell over at work, you know, compensation stuff, or corporate law, or employment law, or family law, of course. You're going straight down that specific route of learning family law. And it's 3 separate courses, and each course, one covers financial proceedings, one covers children's proceedings, and then one covers your final hearing, contested hearing, fact-finding hearing type of procedures. And in all of those, you learn basics, so how to do court statements, how to deliver those, how to organise evidence, witness statements and things, how things run, learning about the various sections, so with CAFCAS and social services, things like that, the various hearings that go down, you know, so you've got your first hearing, first directions hearing, and your resolution hearing, your fact-finding hearing, you know, and all that sort of stuff. So you're learning these little bits and getting more knowledge on these, and then you're also given resources that you can go away and look up and keep up to date on these sorts of things as you go along, and get further help and things like that. And that's why they've managed to be able to condense it into these 3 full-day courses, because you literally are just narrowing down to what is done just in family court around children, finances, divorce, really.
Yeah, no, I mean, it sounds quite intense in a way. And for me, I don't know if this is a regional difference. So I wasn't allowed to bring in anyone as a McKenzie friend that I was connected with. So I wasn't able to bring my partner in or anything like that, or even a friend. It would have to be someone professional. So whether that's like a personal life coach, that is, you know, basically I was told that a McKenzie friend had to be non-biased, so that it was an even sort of discussion. So obviously taking your partner in is not going to work, or your mum. But I don't know whether that's a difference in region, because I would have really have liked maybe, you know, someone out of my relatives to have gone in just to hear about it, because it's such a daunting process to sort of go through and then come out of the room to then retell, and sort of how to put that together vocally is quite difficult. So we've got questions from people. You may have answered some a bit briefly, but we'll go over all of them and try and get, you know, really good full answers so people have got a really good idea. And the first one I would say is about basically, how did you become a domestic abuse support worker? So I know you mentioned the Sane Sisters and everything, and mentioned going through there, but how did you do that then? Was there a course? Was there a program? How did you get that sort of official?
Is that you do. I mean, obviously the lady that set up the organisation has done a lot of the courses and helps run a lot of the courses, and will do them herself as well and carry them on. And those of us that volunteer with her are put forward for those sorts of courses. So you do those sort of as you go along. It is a volunteer organisation. We're all volunteers, including Misha herself. So, you know, it's a case of just sort of finding your own time and things, and just learning as you go, really. It's one of those things where, you know, first and foremost, you're an emotional support. So, you know, if you're a good listener, and you know, you can be that shoulder to cry on. You know, some women that call me will say, this is the first time that I've ever said most of this out loud to anybody. You know, not even my family know a lot of stuff, and I've never met her and she's never met me. And it's, you know, I think if you come across as that kind of person, that's a great standing, first and foremost. And then obviously other things can come in, so safeguarding courses, mental health courses, and things like that, so you can help to spot signs and help out with more in-depth things like that. So but it's all a learning curve as you go along, really.
No, thank you for that. So we sort of discussed what a McKenzie is already, but so how would you get into this line of work? So I know you've mentioned that you can go on these courses. Are these UK-wide courses? Is it? I'm guessing it's a certification.
So. Where my courses were with a guy called Simon Wellard. I think that's how you say his surname, Wellard. If you Google it, it will come up. And he does McKenzie training twice a year, once in the spring, once in the autumn, and he runs them in London and Manchester. And they're obviously three days. The ones that I do work really well because he does them on a Saturday, so it's not impeding in my day job and stuff like that. But I know that there's another one called Brecon Hill that do courses as well. So if you Google in sort of McKenzie friend training courses and things, then I'm sure that wherever you are in the UK, that you'll find something relatively close. I mean, I go to Manchester. I went to Manchester for the last course and going back to Manchester for the next two courses, which is a little bit of a trek, but you know, it's worth it. The courses that I've done through Simon are £225 per course, so it's £675 for the full package. Wow. If you like, but you don't have to do all three. Obviously, I think that a McKenzie friend, if they're going to take it seriously, I think that they should, but you don't have to. It's like I say, it's a full-on intensive course, a full day thing. You know, I came out of it with a migraine, and I'll probably come out the other two with a migraine as well. So yeah, I'm sure that you'd be able to find something relatively close to you in that sort of ballpark figure to go and do and learn yourself. And then you can always go and do them again at any point and refresh. I think at one point Simon asked me if I'd done it before, and he must have thought that I was quite knowledgeable or something. Unfortunately, I probably am a little bit because of my own experience. But and I said, why? If I've done it before, why would I be here? And he's like, well, some people come back for refreshers, so you know, you do it again if you wanted to a few years down the line. So yeah, I suppose
you could. I suppose in looking at it, you could end up doing a lot of the children's kind of, you know, family car aspect, and maybe not so much the financial. And then maybe somebody requests the financial side, and perhaps it's a bit like I need to touch up on that one. So yeah, I can see why you might need the refresher. But no, that's very interesting. Again, this is something I don't think I knew there was training for until talking with you about this. I just thought it was just anybody off the street kind of thing.
Even if you're somebody that's just going through court yourself, you know, you're right at the beginning, say, and you Google and there's the courses coming up, and you have to be litigant in person because you can't afford legal representation. I think it would be great for people like that as well. I mean, I originally looked into it for myself, you know, because if my ex ever drags me back to court and things, which, you know, is always a possibility with us, then, you know, I've got that knowledge for my own cases, my own hearings and things, because I can't afford any legal representation moving forward. So, you know, I think it's good for anyone else's knowledge as well, even if you're not looking to help others. Sorry, my cat's just help others, or build up any kind of business for it and earn money. You know, I think it's quite a good thing to do, just to get that kind of knowledge and power.
I suppose I think it is quite daunting when you go into the setting, especially. I originally went in with a solicitor, so I was like completely dependent on this person. And you think, first of all, well, it's only going to be a couple of hearings, and it doesn't turn into that. And going in there without that person, you feel unprepared because you don't really know what the process is, how to apply the law, or, you know, how things work, or what you can suggest, what you can say, what you can't say. It's really quite frustrating. So yeah, I can see why they would do something like that. I mean, wouldn't it be amazing if that was just offered anyway for people who can't afford it? They get some kind of knowledge.
This has really come into the forefront now, certainly since 2012, when legal aid was all abolished, really, and suddenly there was a whole load of people out there that just couldn't afford a solicitor and were being dragged into these situations. And sadly, the courts don't care whether you can afford it or not. You know, they'll happily just see you sitting there all by yourself. And like you say, it's an incredibly daunting experience. I went through not the child custody case, but the financials. On my own, I was litigant in person, and I had a domestic abuse support worker with me. It was kind of like an unofficial McKenzie friend as well, if you like. But it was still just absolutely terrifying, you know. And I think that's why people like McKenzie Friends and the IDVAs, you know, and the PSUs are now coming to the forefront more, because people are needing them more, especially victims of domestic abuse. If there's been financial abuse and they just haven't had any money, if they've had to flee the family home and things, and they've just, you know, they've got nothing. At least there's this service there. But I do truly believe that it does need to start being regulated more, I think. Definitely.
Well, it leads me on to another person who's asked a couple of questions. So, why, if there are trained McKenzie Friends, are the PSU in the courts?
Well, the PSU is slightly different. They're more sort of charity based. So there'll be Women's Aid or your local domestic abuse charity. When I first started with the children's hearings, I had an IDVA, and she came with me to one of the hearings, and it was great, and she was really sweet, and she sat next to me and she stroked my shoulder and things, but she wasn't allowed in the room, and she wasn't allowed to give me any kind of advice or anything like that, you know, certainly not any sort of legal advice and things. And so I think that the McKenzie Friend is sort of that next step up. The only thing is that not all McKenzie Friends are going to have that sympathetic or empathetic side either, and this is why I wanted to go into this sort of side, because I want to take the domestic support worker and my own experience as a survivor forward with me into the world of McKenzie Friending. So I've got that whole sort of package. I can be there as emotional support with an empathetic ear. I know exactly what they're going through, but at the same time, I can add that sort of legal side to it as well, and help out and advise and that sort of thing. So, but I think that PSUs have still got their, you know, they're still needed. You know, I think that if you've got a litigant in person and that's all they can get, or they're quite competent in the side of paperwork and things like that, but they want somebody in there with them. And obviously, if you've got someone from a charity, they're more likely to let that person in than, say, if you've got your boyfriend with you or your mum with you and whatnot, you know, especially if the friend or family member that you're bringing with you your ex knows, he's obviously going to put his foot down, or she is going to obviously put their foot down and not want them to come in. Whereas if you've got this, stranger, then that's going to help, I think, as well. So yeah, I think everyone has their role to play, and my mother was great, for what she did. Yeah.
No, that's great. And so another question from the same lady: why are the Mckenzie friends not openly available to those who need them? I mean, just hearing from what we've discussed already, I'm guessing there's part of this is awareness of the whole side of it.
Yeah, I would assume so. I mean, if you Google Mckenzie friends, and there are firms, if you can call them firms, out there, out and about, that do have Mckenzie friends. They'll have a group that have maybe set up a little business together, or you'll get independent people that have done the training or going through the training, or have had loads of experience themselves, and have set up on their own. And if they've got any kind of advertising base, so a website or Facebook page or something like that, then I assume that they can be found. But I do know that they are sort of quite few and far between. I think it tends to be a kind of word of mouth type of thing. Yeah, it's a difficult one, because I think that there's still that sort of, I don't think the awareness is out there yet for those that need a Mckenzie friend, but also for those that decide to be a Mckenzie friend. I don't think it's quite really out there yet, and there's not that many around.
Yeah, I suppose it's something that's got to really grow as well. And I suppose when you go into the family courts, it's not like you get a manual or a book or even a leaflet on how to get support, where to get support, what are your options. You sort of go in blind and come out blind.
Exactly. And if you're phoning around trying to get some kind of representation, and they're all out of your price range, none of them are going to turn around and say, oh, well, there's some Mckenzie around. Because my sister never told me, I never heard of the word Mckenzie friend till way after my child case. So, that I don't know whether they're scared of Mckenzie friends sort of breaking into their world. I mean, it's silly, really, because a solicitor and a barrister will always be far more educated and stronger in a court system, and more expensive, obviously, which is one of the big things, I suppose. But yeah, I just think maybe there's just not an awful lot of Mckenzie friends out there, maybe. I don't know. It would be really nice to start seeing charities as a whole, especially big charities like Women's Aid, start to train a lot of their IDVAs in the Mckenzie friend courses. I think that would be a really good way to go about it. Just
that sounds a good idea.
Yeah.
And so this question is from another domestic abuse support worker, and she says she's legally trained and practiced in other areas, but how do you keep up to date with the family law and the processes?
Well, it's kind of on the individual, I suppose, because again, you're not an official solicitor or barrister. You don't work under a firm and have it shoved in your face all the time. So it's the responsibility of the Mckenzie friend. The resources are out there. They're given to you when you do the courses and things. There's Google as well, and you can make connections like I do, where I have some friends that are solicitors and some friends that know a lot more legal stuff than me that I could turn to. And it's kind of you need to keep on top of these things as much as you can. And again, that's where it sort of can fall down in who you choose to go with. It's always about have a good feeling, do your research, ask lots and lots of questions, and just make sure that whoever this person is, especially if you're paying them money, whoever this person is, knows what you want them to know. I was about to say know their stuff. Again, it's difficult because a Mckenzie friend isn't an expert. We're not legally qualified, massive professionals on £250-300 an hour. But like I say, some of us on nothing an hour. So we do what we can. But I always find almost every phone call I take from a survivor or a conversation I have with anybody, there's always something I don't know from that conversation, and I'll always write it down and say, right, I'm going to look that up, or I'm going to go and ask someone about that, and then I'll make a point of remembering that for next time. And you just pick things up as you go along, and you just do what you can, really. And the way I always see it is, if anyone asks me advice on anything and I don't know the answer, don't guess. when it comes to law, you know, don't ever think, well, I'm not too sure, but I would maybe do this. I always stop myself from doing anything like that, because, you know, when it's court, if they take that advice and they go in the courtroom with that advice and it goes against them, I wouldn't be able to live with myself for a start. So, you know, I always say, right, well, I'll try and look that up for you. I'll try and get an answer for you. Or if not, here's the contact of someone who might be able to let you know that information and stuff, and just, take it from there, really.
No, I mean, that's really good, because, I mean, not everybody is like yourself, so you have to be aware of that. And I remember my solicitor advising me to sort of, no, that's impossible. You're not going to get this outcome, or, you know, come on, be more realistic, and let's come up with option A, B, and C, and sort of working through it. And whereas maybe somebody else might have just said, yeah, just go for it, and being a different kind of support. Sometimes it's you need that realism behind it, even though it's really a hard thing to sort of get to grips of. And obviously there is a need for McKenzie Friends, because we've had a few people ask about you already and where you're based. So can you tell people where you're based?
So East Midlands, obviously St Sisters is primarily in Nottinghamshire. We're branching off to, Misha, bless her. We've got another volunteer that's based in Derbyshire, and we've got another one in Leicestershire. So we are sort of starting to branch out, but it's kind of East Midlands. But wherever I can get to, I mean, it's one of those situations where I have a normal day job. I've got to earn money and pay my rent and my bills just like everybody else. I do not want to charge for any of this if I can possibly help it, which means that, you know, on the evenings I'm available on the end of the phone. It doesn't matter, you know, I'll give whatever I can. And when it comes to typing up statements or helping them with statements, proofreading, you know, I'll do that till the cows come home. But if it's sort of travelling to courts and stuff like that, if it's across country, it can sometimes be a bit of a struggle with work and fuel costs and stuff like that. But just sort of crossing each bridge as I come to it, and just see what happens in the future. If the demand is big enough and I feel confident enough that I'm growing and the experience is coming in and the knowledge and things, and I can move more away from the day job and into this, then, you know, for minimal amount of money, enough for me to be able to live, then, you know, if I'm able to go and drive 2-3 hours and sit in a court and help somebody, a victim of domestic abuse, I'd much rather do that than my day job for a start. If I can do it and charge her less than anyone else would ever charge her, with a slightly legal mind, then, you know, it's kind of a win-win situation. So but at the moment it's sort of East Midlands based as such, until I can try and find my way through how I can other people without having to say, right, I'll help you, but it's 300 quid for this and 100 quid for that, because I don't want to go down that. Not what this was about, you know, and I don't want it to ever turn out to be about the money, if you like.
I think it is important that people would recognise that you are a human being. You do have to survive and live and have that, you know, aspect of it. So and I think, again, like what you said, it might be about time, and, you know, maybe there is a demand that there isn't somebody in that location and they need that support and they would rather pay you for that and can't afford a solicitor. Then it sums it up, really. I think for me there was I don't know how you feel, but there's like that feeling of guilt, of I don't want to take anyone's money when they're in a vulnerable situation, because I was once there and I could have easily been taken advantage of or anything. So I try and get businesses or organisations to support me to then support other people. But that's not easy as well. So I kind of guess it's maybe sort of a balancing act. But me looking back now, and thinking about everything, it's like, well, you know, I'd be able to think of it as you are a human being and you need to live, and you're willing to travel this far and do this, and that's a huge, you know, help and aid, really. Something different, isn't it? God, I wish I'd have had you back then. You know, hopefully not needed now. So I've got another question. Why do you feel, how do you feel about MPs trying to get rid of McKenzie friends? Now, this is from somebody, I don't know whether this is true. I haven't looked into it myself. I don't know.
I've heard that MPs are, I think that they're starting to become worried that there's a lot of McKenzie friends out there. And like I've said before, you can literally call yourself a McKenzie friend. You can even charge people for your services as a McKenzie friend and not have any training, any experience or anything. And I think that's where it can be dangerous. And I do really respect that side of it, and I do, you know, as someone who wants to go down the proper route and wants to do things right, I think that if there are people out there that are just wanting to destroy cases for the opposite sex, or they're picking people out because that story has hit a nerve and they're just thinking, right, you know, whatever, or you know, they're so passionate to help but they're just not knowledgeable enough and they're just giving out false advice willy-nilly because they're so passionate that, you know, they want to help but really it's not going to help. And then I think that, you know, it should be more what would be the word, regimented, I suppose, and looked into really, because like you say, McKenzie Friend is a new thing that's coming in, you know, thanks to the lack of legal aid and things like that. It's you know, it's up and coming, and now it is starting to, more people are starting to hear about it. The courses are getting busier and things like that, and you know, I can imagine the MPs thinking, you know, there's going to be all these people suddenly flooding this market, and you know, for all they know, you know, 40, 50, 60% of them could be complete cowboys. And we're dealing with law, we're dealing with courts which are not very nice anyway. I was going to say a few other things, but I'd probably be arrested if I did. But, you know, they're not the greatest of places. And the last thing you want is someone sitting next to you, either giving you bad advice or you suddenly realise that they're rooting for the other side, actually, or whatever, you know, or taking loads of money off you and not really doing anything or doing it badly. So I can totally understand that, really. And I think for someone who really wants to do it properly and do a good job, I think that can be a good thing.
Yeah, no, definitely. Maybe it's that it'll be more measured in the future, or there will be a class, or a bit like any kind of health work, isn't it? A bit like, I don't know, like 'cause my mum's a podiatrist and she has to, by law, go yearly to keep her registration license up. You know, maybe it ends up like that, but again, like what you were saying, you know, who made this mess in the first place?
Exactly. If they want to get rid of your friends and stuff, then bring back legal aid at the end of the day. We'll all just be domestic abuse support workers, or, you know, emotional support workers, or whatever. You know, and these courses wouldn't have to exist, and that would be fine by me. If the alternative was better, then that would be absolutely fine by me. I'm trying to help people and fill a gap that is blatant there, and just trying to help vulnerable people. If they weren't vulnerable anymore, fantastic, you know. That would be great.
Definitely. Well, I want to ask, you know, how, this is my own question to you, how do you deal with you know, helping people through this as a McKenzie Friend, as a support worker, you know, after experiencing what you've gone through? You know, do you find it triggering or anything? How do you cope with it?
You know what? Triggering used to be, I suppose, the predominant one, certainly at first. But now I kind of find it quite cathartic in a weird way. I mean, I suffer from PTSD, so I do get the triggers and I do get the panic attacks and nightmares and things. But I only get those from my own experience and my own thoughts. And I find that when I'm helping somebody out, especially if there's someone in a real pickle and I'm maybe on the phone to them daily for several weeks or even a couple of months, and we're on the phone for a couple of hours at a time, and I come off that phone and, you know, at the beginning of the phone call, they were really panicky. They were like, you know, Taylor, this has happened and I've heard this and they can barely breathe. And by the end of it, we're sat down together having a cup of tea, you know, over the phone, but we're both having and we're giggling about something, you know, and I've sent them away feeling far more relaxed, even if I haven't necessarily been able to help out on the legal side, although that's now coming into it nicely a little bit more. But it just, and then it makes me feel better. And then I find that to bed feeling, you know, and I'm not thinking about my own thing, and I'm thinking about their thing, which can be horrific as well, obviously. But the fact that, you know, I've helped them in some way to sort of move on from whatever it was that triggered them that day. And so they helped me as well, I suppose. And it's just, it's always been my way, really. I don't know whether I'm sweeping my experience under the rug by doing it or what, but it seems to be working so far. So
if it's working, obviously stick with it. I also want to know, what's been the most difficult part of your job role?
Oh, you can sometimes get really frustrated, I think, when you know how someone will need to help themselves, and you're telling them how they need to help themselves, and they're obviously locked in this emotional state. We've all been there. You've been there, I've been there, where you're doubting yourself and you're still speaking in the language of your abuser, and you're petrified, you know, and sometimes I'm just like, you know, it's going around in your head. It's like, you know, oh, just, he's an asshole, you know, get out, you know, and all the rest of it. You can't be like that, you know. And it's just the passion coming through, I suppose, and you just desperately want to help. And that all comes with experience and stuff. And that's obviously a lot less often now that happens. And it doesn't mean that I care for them any less, or I love them any less, or respect them any less. You know, I get it. Because I've been there myself. And so, but, you know, you do get sort of, you just want to just jump in the car or a teleport and just go to the house and just, you know, give them a massive hug, or just grab them and just disappear with them somewhere. But other than that, I don't know, really. I suppose always having to learn. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it can sometimes be hard, because I'm not the most academic person in the world, and yet I'm trying to pick up family law. So, you know, picking things up and finding that every time I learn something new, there's another 20 things that I didn't know that I learned, you know, and section this, and, you know, and it's just, it's a complete minefield. And this is why I'm just so frustrated and angry that people are being forced to enter these courtrooms by themselves, because, you know, it's just disgraceful. The fact that you have to sit in the same room as your abuser anyway, if you're in a domestic abuse situation, but then you've got to address the judges, you've got to know how to do it, you've got to learn all these, you know, legal jargons, and it's just horrendous. And to be expected to do it, I think, you know, just shows just how much this country is crumbling these days, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know about you, but I've not heard one single person turn around and say what a positive experience they had going through the family court system at all. There's always been some kind of problem with, you know, whether it's the judge or CAFCAST or anybody else involved.
Me neither. No.
But let's shift it around and think about the most rewarding part of your job then. What's the most rewarding part?
When you get the good outcomes, I think. I got a good outcome last week with a lovely lady that I've been working with for about 4 months. And, oh, sorry.
Oh no, I didn't mean to set you off. Oh, I'm going to get emotional just listening.
It was an unexpected win, but it was a win, and a win is a win. And so, and you know, and I got off the phone to her. I kept saying, "Oh, I'm so proud of you, and I'm really pleased, and I'm all together and help myself to get." As soon as I hung up that phone, I just absolutely cried my heart out, absolutely, with happiness for her. And it's just, it's times like that, you know. And again, it's when you pick up the phone and you've got this woman in such a panic and crying her eyes out because she's had a court letter through that day, or her abuser's been stalking her place again, and, you know, something's happened. And by the end of that telephone conversation, you know, it's all sort of been talked about in depth, sometimes even put to bed, or, you know, they just feel so much better and safer and happier after the conversation. And that's just, yeah, you can't put money on that.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to set that one off on you there.
Oh
no, but that's lovely, and that's something that, you know, when you're going through those frustrations and difficulties that you need to think about. It's really important to remember, you know, why you get those rewards and they are there. There's some there at the end of the tunnel. You know, you think you're never going to get to that point again, and there you get it. So no, it's really great to hear about that lady from last week as well. So thank you for sharing that. If people want to get in touch with you, you might get a pile of requests. Can you go over to Scotland, Ireland, wherever? You never know. Where can they find you?
Well, Sane Sisters is all over social media. So Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. If you put in Sane Sisters, and it's sisters spelled SISTAS, so not ERAS. And then I'm obviously on all of those forums and admin on a lot of them as well. But Misha's admin on all of them, and she's amazing, and I work closely with her. I've set up a small Facebook page for my Mckenzie friends sort of thing, just to get it up there and out there. So when I finish my training and stuff, then it's already up and running, and that's under Sisters Mckenzie Friend, because again, you know, a lot of what I'm going to be doing is working for free and helping the domestic abuse victims that come through Sane Sisters, because they'll be primarily in my area anyway, because of where Sane Sisters is based. So yes, but at the moment that's sort of where I'm at. But yeah, Sane Sisters is everywhere. So, or just
no problem.
Stick Taylor Marie in just about every domestic abuse support group.
No, that's very helpful. What I'll do is I'll pop all of your information, you know, like email or whatnot, in the description. So if anybody was listening and wanted to get in touch with Taylor, I'll pop it all there, so you can just do it by click of a button. Well, thank you so much for an unexpected emotional end to chatting with you.
Thing about what I'm doing is everybody that I meet. So being at the protester, meeting yourself, meeting Rachel Williams, you know, Victoria Haig, Sam Baldwin, Natalie Page, obviously, who I now work closely with on the court set, you know, and opening all these doors for each other, you know, is a blessing as well, an absolute blessing. And so, you know, I really feel like I found a new calling now, and it's like something good has come out of something really horrific for me. And I feel like I'm becoming quite blessed and all that, and everybody that I meet, including yourself, is helping all of that, you know, so thank you very much.
Oh, no problem. And you know, it's just so good to hear things like that as well. And you know, what a part of doing this hashtag abuse talk was because I didn't want to feel alone in being somebody who had experienced it, because I don't know about you, but when I came out of that relationship, I was like, God, what just happened, you know? And then it got labelled domestic abuse, and I was like, God, well, why am I the only one that's gone through this if it's got a label? And then suddenly you start to connect with all these different people, and it becomes really common. But originally it wasn't something that felt common. It was still very closed. And so the reason why I decided to do this was because I didn't want to feel alone, because you will understand what my thought process is when I'm reacting, you know, in maybe an unusual way, or, you know, having a low time, you know, and it's not just that low time, it's filled with the inability to pick yourself back up sometimes. And having that understanding is completely different to just a friend who has never experienced it. So hearing you say similar things and talk about, you know, the passion and sort of, you know, all of that together just, you know, is like music to my ears, really. So thank you so much for that. So thank you for answering all of those questions. There were so many to get through. I just want to say to everyone that you can join us over on Twitter right now on hashtag abuse talk. We're going to continue the conversation, and we'll be discussing Mckenzie Friends. And I know it might be a bit of an interesting one, because I know people are going to have, you know, thoughts and feelings about this. So we'll get through it, and remember, somebody will be there to reply to you. Each week we have a different discussion, so it's not always a negative discussion on hashtag abuse talk. Sometimes we talk about journaling, or hashtag abuse talk was on Christmas Day, so we just discussed our presents and things. We try and make it, you know, just a community that everyone can join in. And the next live broadcast on this channel is on the 4th of March, so book it in your diary. And I just want to say, I don't know how many times I've said thank you, but again, a huge thank you to Taylor for giving your time up and to be sharing it with us all. I feel a bit emotional after listening to everything that you've said, but thank you. It's so appreciated. I know it's going to help so many people just listening to that valuable information, and I'm sure that a lot of people will not have even known about McKenzie Friends before listening to this, or the rules and regs and everything. So thank you so much.
No, thank you for having me.